You don't need the high-powered, downtown attorneys. And I think the reason it works so well for your business model now is you've grown to a point where it's kind of necessary.
So if you were to describe the type of projects that we're doing, and probably some other folks that we're referring over, how would you describe that part of the work, a backyard barbecue friend?
It's 90% demand letters outside of litigation, right? And what I like to tell people is, look, my job for you is to avoid litigation if possible, but be ready to go to bat if necessary. A lot of the times we can resolve things with just sending a demand letter, but sometimes we need to go the extra step and actually file a lawsuit. And sometimes even we need to go the extra step after that and go, to a summary judgment or something like that. Most of the time when deal is brought to me, there are always unique factors to each one, right, that may pop up a new issue, but these aren't like long-standing cases, and they can be resolved relatively quickly.
Nathan, you're here because you're an attorney, you're in the legal field, and you've had a ton of different experiences, but today you spend a lot of time working on distressed property, curative title projects, and that's the part of the business that is kind of mystifying to people. If they know they need an attorney when they get into real estate, but if they're a house flipper, they need one every 6 months or something like that. In our business, we need you every day. You talk to someone in our office daily. And your experiences are incredibly relevant to this line of work. So that's why you're here today. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got
Glad
it.
to be here.
So let's talk some messy real estate deals, maybe a little bit of profit, maybe a little bit of good, maybe a little bit of bad. How about that?
Yeah, perfect.
So tell me, who's Nathan, up to today? Like, where are you from? Who are you? What makes you tick? Let's find out who Nathan is before we find out what Nathan does.
Sure. I am a Southern boy, born and raised. I was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. Big Irish, Italian, Catholic family.
Dude, I thought you were an East Texas guy.
No.
Sorry to interrupt so fast, but wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I am one of 7 children. My dad was one of 9. My mom was one of 10. So my last name is very well recognized in Mobile, Alabama.
A lot of y'all.
So it was a bit of a shock to me moving to Texas and nobody knew who I was. No, but so I was born and raised in Mobile, went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. That's where I met my wife. She was from Montgomery, Texas, right above Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And so met there, knew we wanted to get married pretty fast. So we got married right out of college. I took the LSAT, and then 2 weeks later got married. Then
Busy month for you.
Yeah. Moved to Houston. I worked in accounting for a bit before going back to law school. Hated it so much.
Was that your undergrad, was accounting?
Finance.
Okay.
So I have the ability to read, use spreadsheets, read spreadsheets, financial statements, which comes in handy a lot.
Dude,
actually.
you're a professional service guy through and through. Holy cow.
So hated the accounting world so much. I was like, I cannot, because the original plan was for me to go back to law school once my wife finished dental school. But I was like, look, I can't wait 4 more years for this. So I was like, I'm going back to law school. So law school's only 3 years, dental school's 4. So I started in her second year law school.
Oh my gosh. She's in dental school. You're in law school.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't even know who y'all were for 3 years ago.
Exactly. So it's actually kind of funny. In undergrad in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, I lived in about a 1-bedroom, 800 square foot apartment. Pretty nice, spacious. We were living 2 people with a cat, less than 500 square feet in Houston while we were going to school. It was something else.
Dude, hardworking, busy, broke.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
For sure. A lot of people helped us along the way. Can't take credit for all of it myself. A lot of family members helped out. So thank God for that. Anyway, thought I was going to stay in Houston. Had no plans to leave whatsoever, but my wife wanted to become an orthodontist. And to do that, you have to match in a residency program, a lot like a doctor would. So you have no idea in the country where you're going to go. So I did not know where we were going to end up until about 3 months before I graduated. We had to wait for her match day, so I couldn't commit to any jobs. I didn't know what bar exam I was going to take. I didn't know where we were going to move. So we matched to Memphis, Tennessee. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'm taking the Tennessee bar. So graduated law school and dental school at the same time. Moved to Memphis
So your bar card came in Tennessee, not Texas originally.
originally. Yeah. Now I'm
Okay.
licensed in both. And so moved to Memphis, started studying for the bar. And I think, and this is probably the thing I'm most proud of in my professional career. It's not a case. It's not a, deal that I did or anything like that. I think the thing that I'm most proud of in my professional career is my ability to pass the bar during that time of my life, because
Oh yeah.
I moved across 2 state lines, no job, no money, and 3 weeks before I took the bar, my dad dies. So I fly back to Alabama, deal with that. Somehow I'm able to keep my focus, and I ended up passing the bar. Thank God.
Wow. You're able to compartmentalize like crazy then.
It was
Or
something.
you're just a train wreck and it worked.
Maybe a combination of both. I'm not sure. So past the bar, I always knew when I was a kid I wanted to be a lawyer.
Really? Was there family? A lot of time it's always family law,
No.
like family lawyers. No,
Not a single
what
one.
made you decide that you wanted that from an early age? And what age?
So, man, I was real little, but I was one. My parents will tell you this too. I always loved to argue, and two, I wanted to. I don't know. I've always been obsessed with the idea of injustice, right? And so when I was a little kid, what specifically made me want to be a prosecutor was my uncle was murdered. Guy was never brought to justice, never arrested anything, because he was friends with the small town Alabama sheriff. So my uncle was unarmed, but the guy claimed self-defense somehow, shot him in the head. And so I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. So that's what I went to law school for. That was the goal. So I became a prosecutor in Memphis.
Well, that's a totally different line of work than you're in today.
Exactly. And so it was a really fun job. I was in the courtroom every day, getting to argue cases and everything. Even if it wasn't trial, I was still in the courtroom.
That's the kind of work that when people see on TV, that's the kind of work you see there. That's that.
Yeah.
A lot of times you wind up a transactional lawyer in a cube closing deals and writing contracts. This isn't what I saw on TV. Like that is.
Right. And what I tell people, it does kind of translate to what I do now a little bit, in the fact that every day I was negotiating deals, right? I was negotiating with attorneys on the other side every day, multiple deals a day. So it got me used to the whole kind of like negotiation, give and take.
After wrapping up that part of your career, do you feel better about justice or worse? Because it's in the middle of it, you look at it a whole different way.
Right. It depends on what you mean by better or worse, right? So one of the best parts of that job was coming home at the end of the day and thinking that and feeling like even if you failed that day in whatever you were trying to do, you were trying to help a victim, right? You were trying to help somebody that was wronged. But that doesn't always pan out sometimes, right? Sometimes people get away. Sometimes the wrong person gets arrested. It happens, right? I always look back on that time in my life very fondly. One of the funnest jobs I ever had. I worked my way up to the U.S. Attorney's Office, so I became a federal prosecutor for a year. I got to deal with gun crimes in Memphis. People kind of what are called straw purchases, right? So what the gangs in Memphis would do, they'd go into gun shops, pawn shops, and they would get somebody who doesn't have a criminal career to go into the shop for. Yeah. Get the buy the guns.
And their name is on that weapon?
Yeah. So and then we'd go after the people that were getting others to go buy the guns, and then the ones actually buying the guns.
Oh
right?
gosh.
My very first criminal trial was in the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was a guy that he had somebody go into the store for him and buy a semi-automatic rifle that had like 100 round capacity in it, and he used it to shoot up a barbecue. And so we went after them, got a conviction, and then
how much? I got to ask this. I know this is off the wall, maybe inappropriate. How much does a straw purchaser for a gun like that get paid?
Oh man, it just depends, right? How desperate are they, right? To get a
I mean, they could
payday.
be doing that for $250 probably.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember to tell you
Ugh,
what he got out of it. I can't remember. Um,
there's no way it was equivalent to the risk that he was taking and probably paid.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Um, so did my I always tell people like they're like, do you do any pro bono work? I was like, well, the first 2.5 years of my career were basically pro bono.
Yeah, you don't
so
get paid shit.
But I coming to the end of that part in my life, I just started having children. I had my first son. My wife was pregnant with our daughter at the time. Her residency was coming to an end, and we had to sort of start making plans. Okay, we know we want to move back to Houston. Well, what are your jobs going to be? And at that point, when you start having kids, your perspective on life starts to change a little bit. And I came to the realization that like I can't come home and oftentimes talk about the work I was doing every day. Like
That was
over the dinner
that would be the
table.
wrong dynamic for a bunch of young kiddos.
Right. I mean, I was dealing with. I'll never forget. And you can cut this out of the podcast later, but this was a pretty gory case. It was a guy that was tied up with electrical cords and then tortured with a drill.
Oh my gosh.
In order to get his debit card. And I was like, man, I'd have given that up a long
Why didn't he
time
give up his
ago.
debit card?
He gave it up eventually, but I was like, I'd have given up a long time ago.
Wow.
So, man, it was things like that. Like, he can't come home and
Crazy.
talk over the dinner table about that
No.
kind of stuff.
Also, when you're dealing with that all day, let's say you're dealing with a business dispute where some people are arguing over some real estate, whatever. It's not that big a deal, really. I mean, it's money, but whatever. That is intimate, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like dealing with that every day, I could see how it could change your disposition.
Right. Yeah. And I could see a little bit of myself. I don't want to say I became dark, but it definitely makes you see the world in a negative light. So I think I was ready personally, professionally, and even spiritually maybe for a change. And so I had one of my best friends from law school. He was working at the firm I'm at now. He gave me a recommendation to the partners. They liked me. They took a chance on me because, look, all I'd done was criminal law. That had no experience with civil. So they really kind of took a risk on me. I like to think it paid out, though.
Yeah.
And so here I am today doing what I do, helping people like yourself and Kyle Westbrook out.
So how long have you been an attorney practicing now?
Since 2019.
2019. Okay. So 5-6 years more or less.
Yeah.
Wow. You've had a pretty diverse, like, I guess, effort in that amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to think that's one of my strong suits. Personally for me is my ability to adapt really, really quickly. I started out at the firm, and everybody my age or had taken the bar the same year I did, they were miles ahead of me.
Oh, really?
In every aspect of practicing civil law. So, I mean, it was like drinking from a fire hose, and I'm still drinking from a fire hose, but I feel like I've caught up to my other peers finally.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. There's a lot there I didn't know. That's fascinating. I'm used to dealing with entrepreneurs, and professional service is a whole different ballgame, but I wanted to be an architect, and you got to be studious, or you have to have a mind that thinks a certain way. My wife has a photographic memory. She would have been able to get the credentials quickly. I couldn't. I didn't think that way, yada, yada, yada. So that was tough. But I've always admired folks that were able to go through that system and get those things and do those things, because there's no way I could have at the time. So, I mean, that's huge. A lot of people can't do it. That's a big deal. And going through all the stuff that you did along the way. Wow. So now you find yourself in the middle of arguing real estate owners.
Right.
So the way you and I met was through a mutual friend, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working on a couple, always various cases, but he's got one he's been living with. It's a road abandonment or not abandonment, depending on whose side you're on. That's the heart of the matter. I guess it's working its way in and out of the appellate courts and up and down and every which way. It's Tyler versus a municipality is more or less what it is.
Right.
It's a messy one. Is that how y'all met?
So yeah, I was the associate on that file. Now, before I start talking about legal things, let me give my little spiel. Anything I say here, please don't take as legal advice. Go consult an attorney. If you have questions about before you proceed with any type of deal or any type of venture, please consult an attorney. This is not considered legal advice. So yeah, I was the associate on the file. He approached the partner at my firm that I work with a lot, and he was like, "Look," he told the partner I work with, he's kind of a legend in Texas litigation. He has almost, I think he has 187 or 188 civil jury trials to verdict, which is unheard of nowadays.
What's his win rate? You got any clue?
I can't.
Usually people tout that.
Man,
so
I don't know. His name's Cliff Harrison. He's very well respected in the legal community, especially in Houston. But that's unheard of, because if you have like 30 trials as a civil litigator, that's considered super seasoned.
What is this dude, like 85?
No, not quite. I think late 50s.
Wow, that's young for that kind of record.
Maybe 60s. I don't know. Don't kill me, Cliff, if I got that wrong. So every day I'm working under him, and that's one of the reasons I was able to adapt so quickly, I think, is the wealth of knowledge that I get from him all the time on the cases I work with him. So Tyler came to him because he knew his reputation for a litigator. My job on the case was basically, all right, filter all this information, because Tyler...
Client control?
Yeah. Filter all this information that Tyler brings us into a palatable way that we can present this to a jury. So thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documents dating back to like 1850, sifting through it with Tyler.
This is a very unique case.
Yes.
And it's a very unique client. It's not the typical client, I believe.
No.
So this is a job in itself where most projects might have an associate and then like the lead. This, I mean, I guess you were the associate there, but this is a kind of a unique role in a normal case.
Right. And so we go to trial. We get a favorable verdict. The first trial that we went to, we won, but that was against all the surrounding private property owners. Right?
That's right. So basically, in summary, from what I recall, I've talked about this thing for years, and there's so many different facets, but generally speaking, there's a large tract of land with an old a county road that went through it. It was not abandoned properly according to the statute by the Commissioner's Court. And that road was still there legally, but you couldn't see it. And the property didn't have good access. But if you if you recognize that road, it now has great access, and it can trade for a very low price without recognizing that road. So I think Tyler's job was buy the property for a good deal, get that road recognized, affirm the road, and now you've unlocked millions of dollars in value.
So you got about 80% right.
Okay.
What happened was he found this tract of land. I forget how he discovered it, but basically it was about, I want to say almost 300 acres, right? And it was in the middle of this rural area, and the road that ran through it, the only road that ran through it, it was public road, and it was still there for good swaths of it, right? There were sections of it that had been overgrown over the decades, right? But it still provided access to his property, right? And to the surrounding properties. So the road still existed. Was it in good shape? Absolutely not. It was dirt road in a lot of places, crossed through a couple creeks here and there. But it was there. And so what the surrounding landowners did.
The gate.
Right. So,
yeah.
So the one road that provided access to this tract of land, the surrounding landowners, they gated off each of the 3 roads that connected to it, right? So they didn't technically block off the road that was blocking Tyler's property. They just blocked off the roads that provided access to the one road that provided.
Oh, okay. That's a twist that I'd been so far in certain details, I missed that part of the twist.
Right.
Okay.
So
Got it.
we So not only did we have to show that our road was public, we also had to
You had
go
to
back,
prove that it had not been abandoned and it was still good.
and it was still good, and that all these other roads that ran through these private tracks were actually public roads
Were
too.
also good.
Right.
So that way he would have the right to use those roads instead of someone blocking off a private road, like one through your backyard, and you have the right to say, you cannot use this.
Right. So, and the reason these surrounding property owners, that they didn't want Tyler to develop this land is because they had been using it for decades as a deer lease. So that was going to ruin, their deer lease.
Wow.
So we sued the surrounding property owners. We got a favorable verdict.
How long did that case take?
Man, I think the case was initially filed in 2021. We won trial in the summer of 2023.
Okay. And that was at the trial court level, and there was no appeal on that verdict?
Not on that verdict, no. So,
but collections haven't been done yet. There's a judgment, I recall, but no collections.
So we got a favorable verdict. I'll say that. I don't want to disclose confidential information. But they that case is over and done with. But there was a sister case that we tried to combine into that lawsuit, and that's the one that's still going on. It wasn't combined into it. And the sister case is against the commissioner court of that county in order to hold them accountable for their part in all this.
That's right. From what I recall, alleged municipal authority abuse, maybe not municipal, just general government authority and abuse of that was like at the heart of it.
Right. And I mean, it's public record, and the petition is on file with what we allege and everything. But basically, the officials we sued, they we've alleged, and we believe we can prove that they were basically in cahoots with these surrounding landowners and allowed them to block off all these roads without facing any consequences whatsoever.
This is interesting. I talk about this is crazy as it sounds. This is a distressed property curative title issue, more or less, project. And there are generally three different types of stakeholders, in my opinion. You got the judicial system, you've got title companies, and then you have privateers and hopefully some profiteers. If that were to make a Venn diagram of all three of those stakeholders, there'd be this little triangle in the middle where they all overlap. That's kind of where I visualize operators like me and you operate. So when you step back and look at this case, you say, wow, I want to go into real estate, want to make some money in real estate. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can flip a house. That's the first way. After that, there's a million other ways. Ultimately, this is a for-profit project, and people weren't treated right and things weren't done right along the way. So that's got to be fixed. Mm-hmm. But this is an extreme version of a curative title project that costs hundreds of thousands in legal fees, years and years, and lots of work to resolve. And this is incredibly high stakes. You win, you make millions. You lose, you might lose millions maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and so that case has kind of propelled me into the sphere of your kind of real estate world, right? I got a great reputation from that case in y'all's world, and so it's been a great source of referral for me, and more so than the I won't call it curative title stuff, because the curative title stuff would be more of like I think more like fractured interests and things like that, so which are more than capable of doing. I think they're pretty easy to do now, but these types of cases where it's like, I like to say it's suits against the government entities that don't want you to California their Texas, right?
Fun way to put it. Yeah.
Right. They don't want you to come in and develop these small towns. And so I've started developing a bit of a practice now in order to assist these land developers when they want to go into these small towns and, build up the communities, to construct housing, parks, new roads, things like that. and the small town
Infrastructure for the humans that are coming.
right, exactly, and the small town government officials will stonewall them for whatever reason, right? And they'll I've developed a way, and me and Tyler, we've come together because Tyler's an attorney as well, so we work together on a lot of things, and we've come together with a strategy of being able to sue these government officials for violating constitutional property rights. It is very, very hard to do so. The Texas legislature has created it to where government officials are almost impossible to sue, almost entirely impossible to sue. There's very narrow windows in which you can do it because they get
Everything is stacked against you from every layer of the process. Why is that?
Because and here's the kind of hypocritical part, at least I think. So the case law will tell you that it is all because they don't want the tax dollars going to fight frivolous lawsuits, right? So
I get it.
right, but at the same time,
But at the same time, you can't hurt others.
But that's true. But by readily admitting that, right, you're saying you don't want frivolous lawsuits to be filed.
You everybody else want lawsuits,
right? So everybody else, you're just fine with everybody else getting sued for frivolous lawsuits.
Bingo.
Just not the tax dollars.
Yeah, this gets deep. It gets complicated. And, I don't know, 10 years ago, I wanted to go flip a house and make a little bit of money. People said, you need a good lawyer. You need this. You need that. I had no clue what I was up against. And Tyler and I have worked on some projects together specifically in other municipalities with lawsuits against those municipalities locally because they want to, it's almost like a taking by zoning change. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's all kinds of, I guess there's all kinds of ways where they would remove my right to due process on some of these projects. And the regular people this happens to, they just get steamrolled and they go on, they lose equity, and that's it. But in this rare case, you have a couple people who maybe aren't looking for a fight, but if they're pushed around, they're probably willing to have one, and they have the ability to fund it. You say, hold on a minute. Well, in that case, the situation is treated remarkably differently than it is 98% of the time. So it's frustrating that those rules are like that. But there's still an ability, if you really stand up and really know what you're doing and really ready to take that fight. The bad part is 98% of the time it doesn't happen. And these many times small municipalities just damage property owners and damage their rights with zero recourse.
Yeah. The biggest problem with how the law is set up right now is the average day person cannot afford to fight this. You just can't, right?
Oh, dude, I burned $100,000 in legal fees in a year just to get a zoning case restored.
And I just had a zoning, one of these civil rights lawsuits I've filed, one dealing with the zoning issue, ended up settling outside of court. But it's right. I charge a massive retainer for those types of cases because there's so much work on the front end that has to be done, right? So
it's going to get nasty,
and it's going to get real nasty, right? And that's why I'm like, look, you got to be able to willing to fork that money up front because I'm about to spend hours upon hours upon hours building this lawsuit and making sure that it doesn't get dismissed outright by the judge when it comes before him. Because normally when these civil rights lawsuits are brought, it's brought by disgruntled people that maybe even are pro se. They don't have their own attorney. They're filing a lawsuit on them by themselves. And they're just used to dismissing these lawsuits outright because they don't know what they're doing. So
another layer of the system being the deck stacked against you in the system, and you don't have the burden to be good or right. You have the burden to almost be damn near perfect, or you will go the way of them.
Right. Exactly. So what I do is for these types of lawsuits, these petitions, or in federal court complaints, right, which is the document you file in order to file. It is essentially the lawsuit, the allegations you are making, right? It's going to be 20 pages or longer, right? Because what you want to do is you want to paint a picture of, okay, here is what our goal was with this property. Here's why what the government did here is so wrong and so egregious. And then you have to spend the second half of those 20 or plus pages laying out the entire framework of why all the government immunities don't apply in that situation. because a lot of the judges that you bring this before, they're not really familiar with that case law. It's such a confusing area of case law that, and there are conflicting cases out there about it. Right?
Oil and gas law isn't conflicting because people have been fighting over it for billions for 100 years or longer in Texas. This is a relatively thin practice field, so there's not a lot out there that's good.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, and there would be more, except people can't afford to file these cases, right?
So when you're in the energy business, they got millions and millions on one deal. They can afford it. Here, it's hard.
And if you get an unfavorable verdict to the trial court, these people, a lot of times people can't afford to take it up to the appellate court.
Well, you're right. So it looks like lately some state laws have been changing. They're giving teeth back to property owners a little bit. You've got a few people that say, I'm not going to stand for this. So you're starting to see the tide change a little bit, but it's no different than a developing part of town. I remember seeing the east side of Austin thinking, oh, it's going to take 6 months for this to develop. Look how fast it is. Mm-hmm. Well, 20 years later, it's mostly turned. I think this tide is probably longer and slower, so it could be a body of work for multiple generations. But the good news is people are starting to get some authority back. I had this happen in 2 jurisdictions. One of them, I got lucky and got an outsized offer on a property, and the municipality wanted that business over mine, and they're giving them everything. So that one I'm not going to fight that one because it works. The other one, we had to fight, and it's tough and it's unfair. And the average person, you're right, will get steamrolled. So, So you got started in that. That was kind of your first, foray into this. And then it started to develop. You got a referral to us. And I think we were a pretty decent client up front, but we were really clear on what we needed because we've been in this for about 10 years. And the right attorney is really important. I tell people, they say, can I get a real estate attorney? And I say, well, that's a lot like saying, can I have a doctor? Is your toenail a problem or do you need brain surgery? Mm-hmm. There's hundreds, thousands of doctors. Lawyers are the same. Real estate lawyers are the same. So I remember us all chatting one time, and other than a positive referral, because that's like the most important place to start, people say, how do you get a good real estate attorney? Start with a referral, because you've had someone who's been through the process with them and will at least underwrite that. In our early days, I probably hired 25 or 30 attorneys, and the project didn't go well, so I'd fire them and get another one, and it was worse than dating, dude. It was bad. I dated 35 men, and I had to pay them by the hour.
Right.
But once we got through that, we said, this is what we need. And I think that helped our relationship be better from the beginning because of expectations and understandings. But I'll tell you now, we really like working with you, and I think you become a critical support role in that business line there, because without that, the fights we fight every day and the discrepancies that we seek to resolve are just impossible without the help of someone like yours.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think it kind of tandems well because and you tell people this all the time, is look, you don't necessarily, when you're starting out in this type of business, right, the distressed asset stuff, you don't need the high-powered, downtown attorneys. I am kind of like one of those, though. And I think the reason it works so well for you, though, for your business model now, is you've grown to a point where it's kind of necessary, right? So my firm, we have 170 attorneys across the state of Texas. We have 3 offices. We litigate in any county you can imagine. We do real estate deals all over, corporate transactions all over, oil and gas, you name it. And so I feel like what I'm able to bring for your business model, because you've scaled to this point now, has been really beneficial in the fact that it's not just me, right? I have these other people that I know and trust. That's
a key factor right there.
Yeah.
Early on, I would just look for a local referral. It'd be some guy, might have a paralegal with him, maybe 2 lawyers in the same office, something like that. Lower rates. Some of them were pretty decent, and that's all that we needed in the beginning, and that's all that I knew about. But at this point, I categorize attorneys from like the small solo guy or tiny practice, and then you have the big global firm on the other end of the spectrum. But in the middle, you've got some smaller or mid-sized shops. And as you go from the small practitioner up to the big firm, you start to see these changes, more professionalism, more resources, more bandwidth. Also with that, because it's not cheap to run a firm like that, more billing. Mm-hmm. You're no longer getting billed in 50 or 30-minute increments. It goes down to like 15-minute increments, 7-minute increments, I don't know, 10-second increments. But so there's this spectrum, and I like to be like, a little ways into that spectrum, and that's where you guys operate, maybe in the middle of that spectrum, where y'all are a nice, mid-sized, good firm that has a lot of resources. I don't have to worry about not hearing back from you. You call the small timer. He's in court today. He's got appointments tomorrow. You can hear from him for a week. And it's not that he doesn't like you or is avoiding you. He simply has so much going on, he can't even get to it.
Right.
And if they were better business people, they'd hire more and grow a business. They don't. But you guys have a business. Y'all got people that just run your business that don't even practice.
Right.
That's why you got a great operation. And you got all the resources necessary. So we can get calls back. If you can't get the work ready, you can dump it on somebody else's plate and it's still ready in 2 days. That production starts to matter in a business where it's not just, you and your kitchen table doing deals. You start to have more real service. And it costs more. But at the end of the day, these type of deals, we like them because they have lower risk, in my opinion, higher margins, and they have more room for things like this. So, our legal bills these days are $50,000, $60,000 a month across the companies. And while that could sound like a lot, I mean, you could have, I don't know, $500,000 to $1 million in net profit in that same period. So I say, okay, we've got salaries, rents, legal expenses. You have all these costs and they add up to a total metric that leaves a good enough margin. I say, then let's buy the best firm we can get to still fit within this category. And you guys are like that, definitely right now. I like that.
Yeah, and that's how we market ourselves, right? We're a mid-sized firm. We target the middle market, right? And that's how we do. And that's what we shoot for. And what I tell people is we're a mid-sized firm with the big law resources, right?
I like that.
We have almost all the resources you'll find at a big firm. All the same tools, all the same support system. And
a lot of your people have been with those firms before.
Yeah, exactly. And they come to us because it's just too big, right?
Yeah.
Those national firms, right? Or the international firms, right? So that's what I tell people. We're about half the cost of those international firms, but we have this almost the exact same resources.
Work products, great.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say you're at a backyard barbecue, Nathan, and somebody asks you, what is it that you do? If you were to talk to them about your workload right now and the projects and what you like and don't like, give me a little rundown of like how you see these projects from your desk. What's that look like to you?
So for me, if you'd asked me this question about 6-7 months ago, I'd say most of what I've been would be doing where other partners work for like defending companies in commercial disputes or personal injury disputes, like someone sues a company. I still do that. Still help partners out with that. But that's not my book of business. My book of business is the real estate litigation. And that's where I kind of like to hang my hat, like to work in that area a lot. My favorite types of cases are the ones we were kind of talking about, like with Tyler's case, where you get to like stick it to the man, so to speak, right? And I told you the story earlier about wanting to be a prosecutor because of my uncle.
This is a place where you get the right to do civil justice in a business transaction.
Exactly.
I just connected that dot when you're about to say that. Yeah.
Exactly. So nothing gives me more pleasure than to stick it to someone that is corrupt and abusing their power.
Well, that's a person that no one likes except the other corrupt people. Everybody hates that person because they got the power and they're bad with it. And I don't have that.
Right.
I love that.
So that's look, I'm more than happy and more than willing to do the curative title things, and I still do it every day.
Yeah.
I'm sure Kyle's texted me about 5 times already since I've been in this room with other issues. But the stuff that I really enjoy doing, and because it's also, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Intellectually stimulating are those cases against the local government entities and things like that.
So if you were to describe the type of projects that we're doing, and probably some other folks that we're referring over, when you were to describe that part of that work, how would you describe that part of the work to a backyard barbecue friend?
So I would say it's 90% demand letters outside of litigation, right? And what I like to tell people is, look, my job for you is to avoid litigation if possible, but be ready to go to bat if necessary, right? So a lot of the times we can resolve things with just sending a demand letter, right? That initial shock will get people like, oh, okay, maybe
Mm-hmm.
I really should consider this, right? But sometimes we need to go the extra step and actually file a lawsuit. And sometimes you even need to go the extra step after that and go, to a summary judgment or something like that. Have not dealt with anyone that we have to proceed with trial yet. May in the future. But most of the time when, a deal is brought to me, it can be closed out within the matter of a couple months, 3 months. No issues. I mean, there are always unique factors to each one, right? That may, pop up a new issue, but these aren't like long-standing cases, and they can be resolved relatively quickly.
A lot of times I ask people, is the juice worth the squeeze? And outside of that, I say, don't push that man unless you're ready to have a fight.
Mhm.
So, as we've learned how to work through these things, maybe 1 in 15 files or 1 in 10 files actually needs support in the settlement side of it. There's a lot of curative stuff that's different, but when it comes to like adversarial events, you need some support. And we can write a demand letter too, but with your letterhead on it, they Google you guys, they know it's a law firm, they know it's not some dude working out of, his second bedroom, like, oh, this is real. Then the next level of that is, how strong is this claim? How good is the claim? I try not to make a claim unless I think like we would really do well. And it's hard to believe that legal field can just go every different direction. You never know. But I like to feel like we're really doubling down on the ones that we really feel good about.
Mhm.
And I don't want to, and also I tell the guys, don't send that demand letter unless you're not willing to go to trial. So what that means is, if this is a $25,000 assignment fee, don't do it. Don't waste your time. It's very rare that we'll send a letter, and if they come back and like bow up, that we'll walk away. We've got to be ready to have that fight. The good news is you probably only have maybe 1 in 10 files need the settlement support. Of those, 1 in 20 probably need an actual lawsuit to be filed.
Mhm.
You start getting the attention, you start talking, people know you're serious, they take you serious. And as long as we're not stupid or hard-headed, we'll work out a deal. We'll make something work somehow, and you get there. Early on in this process, I've tried different ways. First, I would try my best to settle it. Then I'd say, let's have an attorney send the demand letter. And then we looked at doing those in different speeds or orders. I started then for a little while, I said, let's get really aggressive. If I can't make it work on a phone call, I'll just go straight to the attorney, have the demand letter sent. It's fast and aggressive. And let's see if that causes people to settle quick. I thought that would. It didn't. It just inflamed things. And I learned that we need to negotiate much longer and further and be as polite as we can be as transparent as we can be, share and show as much as we can to try to get people across the finish line. That actually does better than slamming a demand letter immediately. But if we exhaust all resources, I then basically plead with people and say, I don't want to file a lawsuit. Please don't make me, but we're pregnant. We got to have this baby. Something's going to happen. I'm begging you to make me do that. Can we please work this out together? If we do have to file a lawsuit, you have to pay, I have to pay. We're going to settle in the middle, or judge and split the baby anyway. Talk through all that. And if we can't get there, then we'll go to the demand letter. Then we'll go to the lawsuit. I found a very effective technique, though. I noticed there's this situation when a person files a lawsuit and you're served by the constable or private service or whatever. The moment you get that thing, they say you're being sued. You have 21 days to respond or you'll lose, whatever. Well, your heart races. You open that thing up. You get nervous. You get the bubble guts. You don't sleep well for a couple days because it's just scary and you don't know. Right. And you know it could be serious. Well, I remember thinking about that in the first couple of times that I was involved in serious lit, and the first time or two that I got an original petition slung over at me, I had those same feelings. Today, it's just like a normal part of business, but I remember thinking, how can I make the most impact with a demand letter? And that's where I came to the idea of, let's have a process server deliver the demand letters, because we make it feel like the lawsuit. We bring more anxiety and more attention and seriousness to an earlier event. And I noticed that was a very effective way to, make sure they got it in their hand. I know you can send certified mail and all this and believe it. I want someone to tell me I gave it to John Smith. But also, I know that they got that feeling of the ones that I had in the beginning, the bubble guts, the nerves, the what do I do? And that's been a very effective tool to cause people to take it more seriously much faster.
Right.
But it's interesting how this process works. You've got the law, then you get the real world, and then you've got this intersection of all of those things is where we find a settlement somehow. But today, it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be in the beginning. If you're right, you file a lawsuit and you win. That ain't it. That ain't it at all.
No, it's not. And sometimes courts get it wrong too, right? I mean,
True.
Just because the law's on your side isn't a guarantee that
or worse, they get it wrong, but they want it to be that way. They know that they're wrong as a judge and their convictions are different. So they put out an unfavorable and unjust ruling. That's even worse. I believe that happens. And that's even worse than getting it wrong. They did it wrong.
Right. Well, I'm not going to disparage the judiciary, but I think most judges out there are legitimately trying to do the right thing. Even when they do get it wrong, right?
Sure.
Are there malicious people out there? Sure. There are always going to be malicious, bad people. But I think for the most part, our judiciary, especially not to get too patriotic flag waving, but I mean, I used to be a history major, and I'd study all these other countries and things like that, and like to see the opportunities that we have in our American legal system compared to other countries, it's pretty shocking.
What do you mean?
So like right now, I just finished a book on biography on Stalin. Right now, I'm going through one with Mao just because I never knew really much about Eastern kind of governments and things like that. It is horrifying, the, I guess, quote unquote justice system that was within those.
Well, they're designed to serve the ruler. It's not justice. They call it that.
Exactly. And then like
it's enforcement is what that is.
There was a professor in my law school too that he had, and you never think this about law school, but he had a film class for law school, and the entire premise of the class was we're going to watch movies that show the legal system from other countries, right? And so I'll never forget this. There was one, I didn't take the class, but he was like previewing the class to us or whatever, and he showed us a clip. And I want to say it was a French movie. And to see how that judicial process worked was terrifying. Basically what it was is you go before, say like a 3-judge panel, right? You're accused of something, say whatever it may be, and you have your accuser, and so you both go before the 3-judge panel. You both have your attorneys, but they're not allowed in the room with you, and so basically you and this other person are just arguing back and forth in front of this 3-judge panel, and then that's the case. That's your due process. Now, look, I don't know nothing about French legal system or anything like that, but I just remember that at what my professor was showing us, and I was like, if that is anything like what the rest of
you're limited to your ability to persuade or your intelligence.
Right. So like it was bizarre.
Charismatic people could get through it all,
right.
And the other people that just are boring people, whatever, would die.
Man, so
wow.
So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, maybe the judicial system, it ain't perfect, but
better than that.
It's better than that.
Yeah, part of this conversation has as a theme of some of the bad parts, but if you step back, generally speaking, the majority of it works pretty good. It's relatively efficient. Rules have changed over the last 10 years to increase efficiency. It's not a bad place. I would rather be here than any other place. Don't get that wrong. I think when we talk about some of the negative stuff, it's such a tiny, narrow, itsy-bitsy scope, and it matters to us. But generally speaking, it's probably not like, as common.
Right.
Yeah, I feel good about our system.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. I mean, it's working out for your business model, right?
It is. So in that light, it could be a case of mine, could be one of somebody else's, but in the curative title, distressed property kind of world, what would be the case that stands out to you the most, or maybe your favorite one to work on so far? Just don't use names or addresses.
Right. Other than the civil rights stuff I've been talking about. All right, so there's one I'm working on right now. We're already in litigation. So it has to do with a distressed property, paid the back taxes on it. And this is something that I think people that hire attorneys, I get this all the time, and it's really frustrating on my end, right? If you only tell me the things that you think are important, that's going to hurt your case. You've got to give me the whole picture, right? Because you never know what little fact can make or break the case, right?
I think an educated person who has experience knows that more and gives you a better total rundown. But like newbies, I'm going to tell my story. Well, hold on. Let's know everything.
Right.
So what's happening here?
So this case, person dies, their spouse, during the administration of the estate, there was a division of the properties, right? Property goes here, property goes there. But I didn't even find out about the division of the estate or how it was probated until much later in the case, right? So what I knew only was that there was a piece of property, taxes were going bad on it, right? The property went through intestacy laws to the wife and then the children, right? So it was split between them. Children sold their shares to us, and so now we're going at it we're in litigation with the spouse to get the other half of it.
In that case, there's a lot of options. Purchase the other half, sell together with them, basically just get to a liquidity place.
Right. But this person is so obstinate to us.
Is that because they don't like what's happening, or are they probably problematic outside of this?
Probably problematic outside of this as well. But the crazy thing is like, okay, I didn't find out there was a probate case till like a few
you
weeks
said
ago.
the intestacy law.
Right.
That means, for people that don't know, intestacy means a person died without a will, and as a result, the state has a will for you. Right. Who are your heirs at law? That's where he gets going to theory.
Right. Well, come to find out, I go look up the probate case, and there is
Wait. So how long has this case been going on, roughly?
Almost a year, if not a little longer.
And what do you think the client spent in legal fees? Just rounded to the nearest $10,000.
So I'm the second attorney brought in on this case, so I don't know what they spent on the other ones. This one, we've had to go to several hearings, so that's driven up costs. I'd say 15 just to my firm.
So then if the other one did that, they're probably in at 30 or 40 maybe today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just ballparking. I'd have to go look at this. I don't
know. Sure, yeah.
But anyway, so this, where was I? I look at the probate
Didn't know about a probate.
Yeah, look at the probate case.
Wait. So you're thinking intestacy, and then all of a sudden someone says, hold on, there's a probate. Who brought this up? The counterparty, your clients?
I cannot remember I think it might have been the other side. They were like, well, her will says this. And I was like, wait.
Hold up.
So I'm like, all right, well, let's go look up the probate case and let's see what happened there. Because the will said that, it's split between the kids and the mom, if I remember correctly. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really change our fact pattern here. But then I was like, okay, well, let's look and see how the estate was actually administered, right? Not merely what the will says, but what was the order that administered the estate. So I go through there, and sure enough, there's an order in public records. The wife had signed an affidavit, and I kid you not, and this was all public records, and it was right there in front of us, disclaimed her interest in the property.
So the intestate succession means nothing. You got clear title. So then what happens? Then you go back to the counterparty and say, I know we've been fighting and we've been all mad. I'm sorry. We win anyway.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure and I know it's
Have you
gonna get ugly.
communicated with the counterparty yet?
Not yet. We're working on.
So that response is like, hey, I'm sorry, I really screwed up. We made some mistakes.
Right.
But also, by the way, this is what it looks like.
And
what are they going to do?
And I got permission to talk about this case with the client. So
Okay.
nothing nothing. I've disclosed nothing confidential about it. So
yeah, I would imagine most of this stuff is public record at this point, pleadings.
Right.
Wow. So what do you think the other side's going to say? Did they even have a defense?
Who knows what they're going to say? I would imagine that it would not play over well. I imagine they're still going to fight.
I wonder if the other side knew it and said, let's just keep fighting. If we can get some money out of these people because they think you own a share, let's just keep doing it. Are they that strategic? Are they that educated on this?
I don't know. It's a small town where this is all going down. And so it's everybody knows everybody sort of thing.
What do you think the value is on the real estate roughly? Orders of magnitude.
I couldn't tell you. I'm not really concerned with that. I'm just concerned with getting the interest that the client has asked me to pursue. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
I assume if you bring a deal to me, it's going to be worth your while for me to pursue it. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not gonna spend your money in order to research what the real value of the property is.
Right. Wow, that's interesting. So that's a curveball. So I think the more educated clients are, the more research, the more experienced they are with this, the better a client they're going to be. But at the end of the day, people can also just make mistakes, even if they're sophisticated and have it together. Someone just screws up.
Right. No, and look, that's why I say, like, be fully transparent with your attorney, right? Because you never know what little fact is going to make or break the case. Because on the flip side of that, if there was a fact that you withheld and I went full steam into litigation and it pops up at a summary judgment hearing and I had known nothing about it and it torpedoes the case.
Your fault, man. I mean, not your fault, client's fault.
Right. Like maybe there was something I could have done in order to
deal with it.
But if you're not going to tell me up front, there's nothing I can do to protect you about it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's interesting. So a lot of listeners are either in this business full steam or poking around it, trying to decide like if that's for them. And some of this stuff sounds really intimidating and scary. And you could talk about some cases are hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Some are only $15,000. But I think the more people hear this stuff, talk to people that have been involved, then they can make decisions along the way. Do I take a project that looks like that or not? Because in the early days, I would avoid anything that required any litigation because I just didn't understand it. And most mid-cap real estate investors don't. But as we started to get more educated about the law and the way things work, we started to make business decisions and place little bets. And that's how we started to get more involved in cases that would require these kind of project management, efforts, I guess you could say. That sounds like an interesting one. Let's see. Okay, what would be the most expensive? Again, no names or identifiers, but what would be the most expensive in terms of legal fees that you've done in the last couple of years on these type of deals?
Well, other than civil rights ones I've been talking about, the most expensive ones are the ones where I'd say that's probably one of the more expensive ones, right?
The civil rights one because
the civil rights, but I'm trying to talk about the ones where it's just like buying out the other heirs and things like that.
Okay, so I wouldn't mind including the other one because I know there's all kinds of other layers in the civil rights thing and the municipal bad action, but I still look at that as and I know the operator there. It's a real estate deal that is for profit, and it's got to be resolved. So I don't know. I would feel comfortable adding that into this category.
Sure. Then yeah, those for sure. Right. I mean, if you come to me with those types of cases, and I'm going to tell you, look, I need a $25,000 retainer up front. Right. It's got to be worth your time because it's going to be worth my time. Right. Yeah. So
what does one like that cost to work through?
To cradle to grave. I did one for a while back around, I think all in all, it cost around $30,000. It settled.
Oh, okay.
Because it settled. Right. And sometimes that's all it takes, right? You need to file that lawsuit.
What if it had to go all the way to trial?
Man, I mean, it could easy go 100 plus easy if
Okay.
you really had to go to trial, because you're talking like depositions, written discovery, dispositive motions, discovery motions, possibly
Experts,
yeah,
tons of research.
exactly, right? Because you're gonna need expert for valuing the property. You're gonna need maybe you need an expert surveyor, right?
Gotcha.
So
So the reason I ask that is when listeners out there are encountering a situation and they say, wow, someone is willing to walk away from this property and hand me their trouble. And it sounds like they'll do it for cheap. Should I do this? What am I up against? So from some of your feedback and then also offers from some of ours, on the low end, you might spend $10,000, $15,000 on a file that, you might file some pleadings, you might go back and forth, but, you settle out in a reasonable amount of time, $15,000. Now, on the other end of that, you might have one of those, or we've had some really nasty longer ones. We spent a couple $100,000. So when you're at that price point, you got to have at least $1 million of profit on the line or more. Otherwise, it's not worth spending that kind of money on the project.
right, exactly. And the civil rights lawsuits, and I'm not going to disclose specific amounts, but the ones that I have handled have all been extremely high dollar.
7-figure plus, I would imagine.
A lot of times.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. There are times where we would, early on, some of the partners would ask questions about what's the right amount to spend and, do we even do these kind of projects? And I remember stepping back saying, okay, let's take a project like a house flip that we did, or I don't know, a small land subdivide or something. Let's see what we sold it for. And of that, every dollar of sales price, what percentages of that were spent on what? What percentage of that dollar was spent on profit? What percent was spent on closing costs, acquisition, just all these things. And we kind of came up with a metric that says, these are our typical costs, this is our margin, this is our sale price. And I looked at that and said, okay, now let's just apply, let's do that at $100,000, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, and run those ratios. And when you run those ratios, actually big legal expenses start to become a smaller percentage of the total. However, it's still a lot of dollars. So you might look at a deal that if it makes you $1 million and you had $100,000 in legal fees, that's 10%. Well, broker fees are going to be 6%, title is 1%. You might be somewhere in that same line. So then we step back and say, wow, if this is a big margin deal, I can really afford representation. I can afford to take a run at something that a lot of people can take a run at, but they're afraid and they don't understand.
Right. Again, though, and I think a lot of people, especially starting out, you got to have the capital up front to attack it, though, because if you don't have the capital up front to pursue those types of cases, I'm not a contingency fee attorney, right? I don't.
Most aren't unless
right,
you're going after insurance companies.
Right. So you got to be able to pay me up front, right?
What's the worst? Tell me some examples of your worst client experiences. And here's why I say that, because people go from house flipper to land guy to something, and they don't know how to behave. Like when I was working in the field, you behave one way. When you're working in an office, you behave a different way. How do they behave as a good client? Or what are the bad things you see? Like, whoa, clients shouldn't be behaved like that.
Right.
They don't pay on time. They don't get back to you. They misrepresent. Like, what are the things that you see that are like, that's a terrible client?
Sure. Well, much to my chagrin, I have taken upon myself to almost answer the phone any time, day or night, much to my wife's disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to annoy me. Like I've taken calls at Sunday night, right? Or Saturday evening, right? I'll step away from the dinner table just for a second, help out, to see if there's a quick answer I can find you. If not, let me get it to you within the next 24 hours, sort of thing. Right?
That's really nice of you.
But that's that. I
don't abuse it, clients.
please, let me have my dinner in peace. No, it's all right. This was not my client, and thank God. I'll never forget this though. There was a guy that showed up to the office. I'm a little worried about disclosing confidential information in this area. That's what I'm worried about. So
okay.
He showed up to the office, and was demanding to, like, no warning whatsoever. It was just demanding to see the person working on his case, and we had no idea he was even there. But he was, and we were like, well, the person I think might be in a meeting. He's like, it's okay. I'll sit here and wait as long as I possibly need to.
What the heck? Why was this guy scorned husband or what?
I don't know, man. But
Jeez.
so, I mean, yeah, that was probably the worst I've seen. There are others that, you know, will call you every day, right? Hey, well, what's the situation? What's the situation? And it's not because they have multiple cases. They may only have one case.
I would bet that that's someone who just doesn't know what they're doing. They're inexperienced. They don't know what amount of correspondence is okay or good. They're nervous. Maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me, right? Because I'm gonna bill you for it one way or the other. If you
that's what people need to understand,
right?
So you know what? Let's talk about this for a minute. People always say, "I hate lawyers." They have all these bad reasons to talk about attorneys, and they get so mad when they see a bill. It's got a 7-minute increment. Well, law firms can't tell you it's a scope of work to construct a 1,600 square foot building out of these materials during this time of the year in this schedule. It's not that. It's we're going to go take a run at this, and the only way we can make a living is we just charge you by time. Right. And people hate that. But that's just how it is. Everybody who bitches about that also has some way that they do it on their end because they got to make a living too. That's just how it is. So we've gotten, we're comfortable with that. We're happy to pay the professionals that help us make a good living. We're good with it. But a lot of people always argue and whine about, what did you charge me for this and that? And they argue about it. I'm like, pay the damn bill. If you're a business person, pay the bill and move on. Because if I ever need to call Nathan at Sunday at 6 o'clock, doesn't happen very often, but we pay our bills immediately when we get them. There's no 30-day or 60-day waiting. We pay them right now. We don't argue and bitch about little line items. And if we do all that, we know we're in the top category of client behaviors. So if there's some emergency that I need to call Nathan at 6 o'clock on a Sunday, I don't feel so bad that he's going to answer my call as opposed to all that other crap and then trying to do that.
Right. And so, I mean, and you're right. People do get upset sometimes, when, hey, you billed me for this phone call. We were only on the phone for 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah, you called me at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. Like,
even if they call you at 10 on a Tuesday, if you didn't spend that 15 minutes working on something else, you spent it on theirs, taking their call, you got to bill them. That's just how this stuff works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's 15 minutes I could have been working on something else.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, it is what it is. It's
a lot of times I tell folks when it comes to your professional services, you're doing a project that probably has a really good profit and a good outcome. So don't beat people up. You need to be able to, you make your money when you buy. You need to get a good deal on the front end. If you don't get that, you're beating up everybody along the way. If they don't like you, they're not going to give you good service, they don't want to work with you again. So that's why we're really strong about the moment we get a bill, we try to get it paid within 1 or 2 days instead of it waiting. We don't pick it apart. And I tell people that if you want professional services to take you seriously, don't be a shitty client. That's equally as important as you getting a good service provider.
Right. And some clients don't. I feel like for those who have not dealt with an attorney before, right, on the civil side especially, criminal's a little different. A lot of them don't charge hourly. It's based,
oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of criminal attorneys, it'll be based on the type of crime you're charged with, right? Murder is going to cost you a lot more than a DUI case.
Really? I didn't know that.
And now, at least the ones that I've dealt with and everything, I'm sure there may be others out there that do it differently. But depending on the severity of the crime, right, that's how I've seen them do it. Anyway.
Oh, that's interesting.
But for those that haven't dealt with attorneys on the civil side that, bill hourly, and I kind of touched on this earlier, I'm more than happy to talk with you over the phone, right? But if you're not willing to pay the $4.40 an hour to talk on the phone, don't
call me.
Don't call me, right?
Yeah.
And look, if you and I are collegial enough, and you call me, you're like, and we're just shooting the shit. Yeah, I'm not going to bill you for that call. Of course not. But if you're calling about a case,
work.
Yeah.
And there are times where I've been in conversations with people about this kind of topics, and I feel I really enjoy turning it around on them. Like, let's just say I don't know, they're an architect and they bill by the project or whatever. I like to turn it around and just say, okay, well, um, if you were going to charge X amount, I would ask them, if you're getting paid to work 5 days on this project and the client just says they're going to pay you for 4 days, what about that 5th day that you worked on it? How does that work? Would you rather just not pay that because your client doesn't like that on your invoice? And people are like, that's strange. It doesn't make sense. And I say, I understand. This also doesn't make sense. The trick is you just can't scope it out. There's no way.
Right.
It could take 40 hours or it could take 10. And as a result, you just have to pay because what it is, you're trading with your time. You got 40 hours, you got 50 hours a week. That's it. Pay me by my time or you can't do it.
Right. And people always ask me, they're like, okay, so what's it going to cost? What's the estimate? I'm like,
depends.
Yeah. I mean, every case is unique. Every case is, right? I've had cases where I thought, oh, this will be a one-off. Won't even take me an hour to get this to you. Turns out, okay, well, so this popped up in, there's this issue now, there's this issue. And so far it's ballooned. And look, when that situation happens, I'll contact the client and be like, look, I know I told you, this was going to be an hour thing. Here are these issues I'm encountering. Do you still want me to pursue this?
Mhm.
Because it's going to be more expensive than what I initially told you.
See, I think that's actually a good client management
Right.
protocol. We kind of thought it might be less than 25 grand. If this happens, things are changing, but you just got to know that. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Or this is looking like it might go to trial, although only 2-3% of cases do. This might. You ain't going to be at 50 grand. You're going to be at 200. Are you okay with that?
Right.
Having those conversations early on, I think, are good because then they've been prepared. And even if it doesn't go that route, if it does, you're covered as the provider.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I briefly touched on this earlier too, is the work. A lot of attorneys have practiced their entire careers as, quote unquote, litigators without even trying a case, right?
Because nothing goes to trial.
Yeah,
or
because nothing
low
goes to trial,
probability.
right? When you step into that, and I've been lucky enough to, I did the criminal work. I had one trial because I would have had more trials, except I had the great and awesome fortune of passing the bar, and then COVID hits 3 months later and shuts down all the court systems for 2 years, right? So right before I left my criminal, law practice, I got my trial. I think it was like 2 weeks before I switched over to civil. I finally got a criminal law
What
trial.
kind of case was it?
This was the one where it was straw purchaser. The guy
Okay.
bought, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of really good attorneys, right, are extremely talented and good at fighting cases up into the point of trial. When you step into that courtroom and you start talking in front of a jury,
Whole different ballgame.
it is so different. You're not arguing before someone like a judge that is versed in the law, right? You got
Go to Walmart, pick 12 random people. That's a jury of your peers right there. That
Right.
ain't the judge.
Right. You got to be able, and I tell people this all the time, a good trial attorney, one that not just a litigator, a trial attorney, they're a good showman. You got to be able to you got to be able to captivate audiences because that's going to,
That's equally as important as the truth.
Right. Right. And so I take that back. That's 50% of it. The other 50% is you got to pick that jury. Trials are won or lost in voir dire. If you pick the wrong 12 out of that panel of 60 or however it many it may be,
you don't have a shot.
Right. Right. You got to get the right jury.
That's interesting. As we pick attorneys over a career, I ask people what their experience looks like, and I've found that people who know what it's like to have been through a lot of trial operate pre-trial part of the lawsuit much differently than folks that don't have any of that experience at all.
Right. Right.
It's just it's almost like more wisdom. A 50-year-old man's going to act different than a 20-year-old man. He's just got the wisdom.
Right.
He may not have to go all the way, but knowing it, it's helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, in like my short legal career, especially the short window that I practice civil law now,
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky and blessed enough. I've sat second chair in 3 trials already.
Oh, wow.
So, and because I go to trial with the Cliff Harrison, like I was talking about, he the one with 180 some cases under his belt, wealth of knowledge, and so he's in every trial I learn something new, right? How do you conduct yourself in front of a jury, right? It's very different than how you conduct yourself in front of a judge.
In what ways?
So like you can be more argumentative if you're arguing with another attorney before a judge, right? You never know what's going to piss off a jury, right? You could wear the wrong shoes, right? And you're a clown show to them, right? It is all about how you present yourself. Are you good at captivating an audience, right? And are you good at presenting the facts in a way that's not going to put them to sleep? I see
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So I see so many attorneys in the cases that I've seen. And look, I'm not some amazing seasoned litigator myself, right? I'm still very early in my career and I recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen enough trials so far, even ones that I may not have participated in. So many attorneys, think they'll brush over evidence, right? They'll throw a document up that is really a crucial piece of evidence, and they'll throw it up on the screen, and they'll say this is important, or, yada yada yada, and then they'll be like, okay, I showed it to the jury, so that's good enough. No, I mean, focus in on that document. Highlight the specific words that are important in that document. Don't just like flash it on a screen and that's good enough. You got to be able to make them focus. That's the key. Make the jury focus on the crucial pieces of evidence. And a good way to do that I've seen, especially if you want to highlight something that is an incredibly important piece of evidence, technology is very helpful, but in some ways it's made us lazy. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the most effective ways to highlight something is get you a giant poster board, right? Something. Put it on an easel in front of the jury. Start writing down what's important, right? Because the jury's going to have notepads themselves. And when they see you writing down something, they're like, oh, this is important.
Must be important.
I should write it down myself too, right? At the same time, though, when say somebody else starts, the other side's presenting their case, don't write anything yourself, right? Because the jury's going to see unimportant. Yeah, so the jury's going to see you over there, and you're just like, well, whatever.
God, so when you look at it like that, you step back and say, holy cow, this is equally a performance.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right. It's all trial strategy like that, right? And like I said, it's been a wealth of knowledge sitting under Cliff. I mean, he's by far the best litigator I've ever seen.
Wow, that's impressive. That's exciting. There are times, okay, so this is making me think of a project that I did a long time ago. We've only been to one trial, and it was a trial on legal fees, and it wasn't like trying the result in the case. It was a summary judgment, and we had a little legal fee trial. So that was the closest I've ever been to that. But I've been through enough cases and enough settlements, and I know what this process looks like up until that point. And I remember having a dispute with a guy. He failed to close on a property. He was a commercial buyer. We were commercial sellers, so it was business to business. And he basically just said, I'm not going to do it. And I remember getting him on the phone, and I was really pleased. I wish I would have had this whole thing recorded. This was a little bit earlier in my career, but I just gotten the experience, and I just started to learn how to deal with people. I remained completely polite and calm the whole time. I let him know why I believed he didn't want to do it. I let him know why I believed he had the obligation to do it. And I talked through this process, what it would look like. If you do it, we close and go home. If you don't, this is going to happen. I'm going to file the lawsuit. You're going to put down your first deposit. You're going to think it's not that big a deal. I'm going to put down mine. You're going to be out of that first deposit within a month. Now you're going to have to re-up that deposit, but by the third month, you're going to have to re-up that $5,000 deposit, and you're going to be asking your attorney how much longer is this going to go on. In your mind, if you paid $5,000 a month for each of the first 3 months, you're now going to believe it costs you $5,000 a month for the duration of the time. So you're going to be asking your attorney, is this going to cost me $60,000 a year? How many years is it going to take? I know where this is going to go in your head, and I'm going to continue to do it this way. So I just kind of walked through this whole process. And generally at the end, you're probably going to end up settling. The problem is you have the ability to settle right now with no money out of pocket, but then you're going to be 80 grand light in the pocketbook. So you're not going to want to settle with as much because you already spent 80 grand, but the 80 grand is going to make you want to settle because you're so exhausted financially.
Mhm.
So I went through this whole thing. And then I said, the unknown wild card here is, I think I'm right. I know I'm right. And I'm going to and then at this point, I converted from the polite. I said, I'm going to chase you to the end of the earth to get my pound of flesh. If you don't believe it, ask my attorney if I'll do it. And I remember it was really silent. And I thought, oh, okay, we're in a spot where, and my attorney was on the phone with them at the time. And I thought the first person who talks loses. So let's both be quiet. Let's wait for him to talk. And then my attorney at the time chimed in and said, I hate to say this. I'm not trying to be a bully. I've represented this client for a very long time. What he's saying is factual. He'll do it. He probably will win. He has no problem spending the money. Let's just get this worked out. And the guy said, okay, let's work it out. He agreed to buy himself out of the commitment. It was a commercial wholesale, and I was going to keep the difference of the two contracts. Might have been 50 or 100 grand. I can't remember. I agreed to let him walk if he paid me half of the assignment fee that I was going to get otherwise, or he would have to pay the $900,000 to buy the property and was worried he's going to lose money. So I said, you might have made a mistake, but since you're beyond your option period and I'm committed, my option's hard, pay me for my option and half of what my assignment fee would be. He agreed to pay it. We walked on and moved on. But I just remember thinking it worked like I hoped. We explained it really well. We painted a picture. So again, I've never been to a trial. I'm not an attorney. But I remember thinking that whole time, like, we're painting this picture. And if he believes in the way that outcome is, he's going to do what we said. And he did it.
Yep.
So that's my mini experience with the presentation of it all.
Right.
So I can liken it a small amount to maybe a greater presentation like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, yeah, the way you present your points, your facts, your arguments matters, right? Your tone, your ability to convey it in a way that people are able to digest is just as important as having those facts in and of themselves. Right?
Absolutely. All right. So Nathan, we've got like a fun background of what it is you're doing, what these kind of projects look like, some advice to customers. Are you actively taking cases like this right now?
Absolutely.
Interested in them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to help people that need help. It's why I became an attorney, right? Help people, and so it's been a pleasure working, with your companies and the others that kind of do your business model. So
you said earlier that y'all service pretty much all the counties in Texas. Where are your offices located?
So we have our main office. Our biggest one is in Dallas. I think it's about close to 100 attorneys there. Then our second biggest office is Houston, which is where I'm at. I think it's got 50-ish
Wow.
attorneys there, I think. And then the Austin is the small one. It has about 10 to 15 attorneys there.
Okay, those are all good. I mean, there's a lot of people there though.
Right.
So if somebody wants to do a project with you or even look at that, what's the best way to do that? Call a firm, call you. How's that look?
So, as far as I know, I'm the only one in my firm that deals with these. So I would encourage you to reach out to me. And depending on and look, I touched on this earlier. If it's something that I may not be, particularly familiar with, there's somebody in the firm that is, and I have people that help me out with these cases that I can help farm it out to. Look, I'll still be involved with it. I'll still oversee it. But if it's more of a specialty area, right? So like, probate's a perfect example. Until I started working in this area, I was not familiar with probate at all.
Oh, wow.
And so now 6 months into this, I've gotten a bit of a crash course. And the other people in my firm who are that's their bread and butter have been teaching me more and more every day. And so now I'm getting more familiar with it. Now I'm comfortable with it. So that would be a perfect example. Tax issues. I'm not a tax attorney, but we have tax attorneys in the firm, right? So sometimes there are abnormal tax issues with the land that's bought.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So So any of the distress stuff, probate stuff, curative work, and then outside of that, if you got a business dispute, I mean, that ended up happening sometimes too. So maybe that too.
Yeah, no, I've done business disputes like partnership disputes, breach of contract, obviously. Let's see what else. said this earlier, did some personal injury defense, insurance, plaintiff work, right? Suing insurance companies when they don't pay out on their policies, including title insurance stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay. Then in the caption below our episode, I'm going to put your firm's information, probably your email address and things like that, so folks know how to head that direction. So what's next for Nathan? Tell me about what are the next 5 years looking like? This could be in the legal field. It could be in your personal life. I don't know.
Right. Next 5 years, hopefully. So my wife just opened her orthodontic practice in Willis in last June. So hopefully that takes off.
How'd you pick Willis? We did a warehouse in Willis, and it's like the suburbs of the Woodlands.
Right.
Is how I would see it.
So we actually
or rural Woodlands.
Yeah. So my wife actually paid for a demographic study so they could figure out where would be the most profitable for you to open up an orthodontic office. They said Willis is about to boom.
Is it underserved or something?
Yeah, very, very much so.
Huh.
It's underserved. It's growing. So they said this is going to be a really high profitable area. That's where we opened up. She's been running since last June, so we're coming up on a year. Surely enough, it was slow in the beginning. Now things start picking up, right?
Yeah.
You know? So hopefully that's taken off, and I can just be a stay-at-home dad. No, I'm kidding. I would be so bored if I were a stay-at-home dad. It would drive me insane. So hopefully personal life that takes off, and we're rocking and rolling with that, and then professional for me, hopefully in 5 years I'll be practicing almost 10 years or more. At that point, hopefully I've made partner, developed a really good client base professionally. And yeah, that's where I'm. Maybe even another kid along the way. We'll see.
Oh, the factory's not closed,
huh? I'm a bit of a masochist there. I like large families.
Man, I love kiddos. They're great and they're tough. We've got 4 of them, and our house is a circus at all times, and it's stressful sometimes. My wife had 6 siblings, or 5 total. But I'll tell you that one day I know all the kids are going to be up and gone, and me and my wife are going to come home. It's going to be quiet and boring, and I'm afraid that's really going to be true.
Right.
How many do you have now?
3. So I have a 4-year-old that's going to turn 5 in September.
Is that your oldest?
It's my oldest.
Woo!
I have a
like right together.
So, and then I have a 2-year-old that's going to turn 3 April 25th, and then I have a almost 1-year-old that's going to turn 1 April 5th. Happy Tax Day. So.
Well, then she's about 1. That means Mama's about ready to have the next one. Looking at your timeline, I'm like, I know what's going on.
We would love to have all. So we have the oldest 2 potty trained. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, we'll have the other one at least potty trained before we get.
Yeah, there are these phases. My favorite is about 4 years old, end of 3s or 4s, where they're out of diapers. They can eat on their own. They can sleep in their own bed.
Yeah.
You're not carrying them everywhere. Like, that's a meaningful time. And then once they hit like 4 and 5, they start to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. They get a personality. Like, I can get on. You're not like a Goonie. I'm helping to preserve like life every day. Like, You're now like a independent being. This is great.
It was so funny. So up until a week ago, I had a full-on beard, but it was just getting hot. So I shaved it off. I still wanted to keep some hair on my face, right? In my head, because it's all gone now pretty much. So I kept the mustache. And so it was still relatively new to my daughter. And then it was this last Sunday, we had massive thunderstorms in Houston. Like, woke both my kids up, so they came into our bed, right? And so they're sleeping between me and my wife. And I'm almost back to sleep. And then I just feel a little finger come over. My daughter. just petting the mustache.
Like you're a puppy?
Yes.
Oh, those are the fun parts of kids.
So it was funny, but at the same time, I'm like, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. to start work.
That's good.
So, like I said, I'm a bit of a masochist. Why not more? So
yeah, do it. We hit the 4. My wife said, this is going to be tough. I don't want to do another one. Okay, you're the one that does a lot more of the work. in the production side, so I'll let you drive the bus there.
Right.
So if you were to give some folks advice that are either interested in this kind of projects or are already deep in it, after the experience you've had in this, what would you tell folks out there who are thinking about these kind of projects? What would you tell them from the perspective of an attorney?
From an attorney, I would say that kind of a little bit what I touched on earlier, right? We're here to help you. We're here to service you, right? So if you withhold something just because you're afraid it's going to make you look bad, or you're afraid that it's going to somehow torpedo your deal, I'd say just be upfront with me, right? Be upfront with your attorney. Be like, look, here's the situation. Because if you send me off half-cocked to go, litigate something, or send a demand letter that, hey, we're actually not in a position to bargain this way, it's not gonna turn out as the way you think it's gonna turn out.
Be curious,
right?
folks, and be honest with the people you work with.
Right. Exactly. Just be upfront. Look, and I would say when you want to find, if you're looking for a good referral source, talk to people that have been, quote unquote, I guess, in the shit before, right? Like have dealt with attorneys, because don't be the one to go try somebody new, right? Unless it's somebody like that you have, right? So if it's your buddy that you've known for decades, right, and he's a good professional person, sure, but don't make the mistake of being out the one and going to try to find the Cinderella that's gonna have the glass.
That's good
slipper.
advice.
Let somebody else go do that. Make all the mistakes first, and then you can kind of go from there, right?
Yeah.
And even if their attorney that they recommend to you is like, look, I'm swamped, I don't have the capacity to do this right now, they have a referral system and a network, and they're not going to send you to somebody unless they completely trust them as well.
Oh, that's fair. Find a good one. If they're busy, they might know another good one to send you to.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Well, full disclosure, we work together, so I would personally point that recommendation towards your direction. So another thing I like is that because you've got the office in these bigger cities, when we've got projects up in the North Texas area, you've got folks up there in that venue that if they got to go to court, they can take cases up there, and it's great. So Houston, Austin, and Dallas, that's an advantage working with a firm like yours that having a smaller firm just can't do. You're limited to that area.
It also, look, it will cut down on costs, and here's why.
No travel,
right?
Dude.
That's such a major.
I'm fine with paying attorneys $400 or $500 to do the work. I'll be damned if I'm paying them that much to drive down I-35.
Right.
That's expensive.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So like, if you got to go to the middle of nowhere, I mean, say you got to go to West Texas, right? Like Seminole, Texas. I've been there before.
Dude.
In between Midland and Lubbock.
Well, when you think about the difference, let's talk about that real quick. If you've got someone that's near the area, they got an hour or two for the work at the courthouse, maybe an hour to drive, an hour home. That's 4 hours. That's $1,600 at roughly $400 a piece. But if you've got someone coming from Houston, 4 hours there, 4 hours back, you're 8 hours, then a couple hours there, 9, 10, 11. Then they might have to spend the night. Dude, you're talking 20 hours worth of billing. You're talking $4,000 or $5,000 for a hearing as opposed to $1,500.
Plus all the food, the lodging, all that. Right.
All the whiskey, all those things.
I do not charge I do not charge alcohol to clients. I want to throw that.
Charge for the whiskey, even though I'm drinking it because of them. Well, this is good. Well, if folks want to find you, Nathan, how do they find you?
They can go to my firm website, or Munchhart. So MUNSCHHARDT. You can just type in my name on Google. It'll pop up. I have a pretty unique name. So Nathan Vrazel, Vrazel. And my firm bio should pop right up.
Awesome.
Email me. I'm probably going to be more responsive to email than in any other form of communication. So, yeah.
Well, Mr. Vrazel, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Logan.
You got it. Until next time.
Yeah.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.